Nebuchadnezzar was angry with them because they uh, refused. They could not help him, recall his dream and the interpretation thereof. For this cause, the king was angry and very furious and commanded to destroy the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain. And they sought Daniel and his fellow to be slain. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. So here Daniel was considered to be a wise man of Babylon. They just graduated from their training of 3 years from the schools of Babylon. So probably some of the wise men that were called by Nebuchadnezzar were the teachers, but they were not considered as really wise men of Babylon because they were not called in the presence of the king at the time because they just newly graduate. So they're considered to be less intellectual. So they were not called. But when the king's decree was made, they were included in the decree to be slain. So this is what happened. Okay. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give them time and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made known unto Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, his companion. So here Daniel always seek help from his close friend who are of the same faith, and they ask help from God, that they would desire mercy of God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the decree revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times and the season, and removeth kings and sitteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth in him. I thank thee and praise thee, O God of my father, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me what we desired of thee, for thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. So let us remember, if we read in Daniel chapter 1, that Daniel, among the 4 Hebrews that were captives and were taken to Babylon to be future advisors of the king and were trained, that Daniel, of the 4 Hebrews, he has certain knowledge that the other 3 Hebrews do not have. He can interpret dreams and vision. And we know in Amos chapter 3, verse 8, that the Lord, reveal his secrets unto his servants, excuse me, the prophets. So here, God could not reveal his secrets unto the representatives of Satan, who are the wise men of Babylon. He could only reveal it unto his own servants, which are the prophet. And we know that Daniel was a prophet of God. Now let's go to Daniel 2, verse 31 to 33. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part clay. So here, Daniel told the king the dream, and the king right away remember exactly that was the dream that he had, so that when Daniel made the interpretation of the king now was ready to accept the interpretation to be true, because in his wise man, nobody could help him recall the dream. And if Daniel can do it, then Daniel's interpretation must be correct. So here, if you look at history or the Bible in Genesis chapter 41 verse 8, you know, before Daniel, Pharaoh had a dream also, and he called the wise men of Babylon, but I mean of Egypt, but and the wise men of Egypt was told exactly what the dream of Pharaoh was, but they could still not make the interpretation. The same thing in the book of Daniel. If you read the book of Daniel in Daniel chapter 4, verse 4 to 7, later on, King Nebuchadnezzar dreamed a dream. And he remembered the dream. And he told the wise men of Babylon what was the dream, but they could not interpret the dream. They do not know why. Only God who gave those dreams, only God can knows what is the interpretation. He cannot reveal those secrets unto the representatives of Satan, only through his representatives, who are the prophet. Okay, the wisdom of this world, I mean, the wise men of the world or Satan's representative were exposed. Their wisdom is just foolishness. They do not know. In 1 Corinthians 2:14, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. So spiritual things are spiritually discerned. Prophecy, only the prophets of God knows what is the interpretation thereof. And also the prophets of God know what is the true prophecy. Satan probably can come close, but only God knows. So let's continue. Daniel 2, verse 34 to 36. Thou sawest. So here he saw an image made of gold, silver, brass, and iron. And what happened? Thou sawest till a stone was cut out without hands, and smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and break them in pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smoothed the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. So here, this is the this is what Daniel was telling King Nebuchadnezzar. That there will be four kingdoms that will rule the whole world before Jesus comes the second time. Okay, and this mount stone cut, excuse me, stone cut without hands represents the eternal kingdom that God will establish the second when He comes the second time. And those people who are faithful today will be the one who will inhabit the eternal kingdom which God has prepared for the righteous. So this is the image that in the interpretation that King Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. The Daniel 2 verse 38 to 45. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beast of the field and the fowls of heaven hath given unto thine hand, and hath given thee ruler over them. Thou art this head of gold. So King Daniel, Prophet Daniel was telling King Nebuchadnezzar that he is the head of gold, or his kingdom, and his kingdom ruled in 605 to 579. And after this shall rise another kingdom inferior to thee. So that, according to history, that is the Medes and the Persian Empire. And another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over the earth, and that is the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as that iron breaketh all things, it shall break in pieces and bruise. Whereas thou sawest the feet, part iron, and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron. And the kingdom shall be divided, and there shall be of it the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. So this is how the kingdom look like. It is iron here, there's brass, silver, and the gold. In here, it's part iron and part clay. That means that and there's the 10 toes, which we will discuss later. So he is the head of gold. Now, as the toes of the feet were part iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. So here, after the four kingdoms, when the Roman kingdom was finally, empire was finally broken by the 10 kingdoms, what happened? They are trying to unite the whole world again, but the prophecy says that you will never be able to unite the world again like the previous empire because the prophecy says so. Okay, but according to Revelation, that there will be a time when those kingdoms will unite for 1 hour with the beast. And that we have to prepare for that because that is the time when they enforce the Sunday law that we cannot buy or sell. Okay, let's continue. And whereas thou sowest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron mixed with miry clay. And the days of this king shall God of heaven set up a kingdom, that is the stone cut without hands, shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms and shall stand forever. So the kingdom of God that shall be established, which was the stone that smooth the image, will stand forever. That is where the righteous will live forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God of heaven hath made known to the king what shall come to pass. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. So here, there will be four kingdoms to rule the world, and there are other people, ambitious people who would like to unite the world. We know that Hitler wants to unite the world. We know that Napoleon wants to unite the world, but prophecy says that you could not do that. Now let's go back to Babylon. How did Babylon fell as a um, empire? Okay, how did the kingdom of Babylon fall? In Daniel chapter 5, okay, after King Nebuchadnezzar's death, there was a struggle, eternal struggle between the descendants of King Nebuchadnezzar, and there was changes of king, and the kingdom weakened itself internally. So here, this is how the kingdom of Babylon fell. In Daniel 5, verse 1 to 12, Belshazzar the king made a feast to thousands of his lord, and drank wine before the thousand. Belshazzar, whilst tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and the silver vessels which his father King Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessel that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem. And the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. And they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver and of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw part of the hand wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees moved one against another. So here, during the time that King, excuse me, King Belshazzar made a great feast. At the time, they were surrounded and sieged by um, Cyrus the Great, the general of the Persian Empire. But he was so confident that Cyrus could not touch him inside his kingdom, so he just he just party inside the kingdom. But the Lord knows when the first kingdom will end and the next kingdom will start. So here is the king. Okay, he saw a hand writing in the wall with a hand, and the king cried to bring the astrologers, the Chaldeans, the soothsayers, And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler of the kingdom. Let's stop right here. So here he was astonished. Remember, he was drunk. Probably he became sober right away when he saw the writing in the wall because he was scared to death. And he called the wise men of Babylon, but they could not interpret. Again, here we could see that only God's representative could interpret, the message of heaven. God cannot reveal it unto the representatives of Satan, which was at the time the wise men of Babylon. Then came all the king's wise men, but could not read the writing, nor make known the king the interpretation thereof. Then was the king greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed, and his lords were astonished. Now the queen, by reason of words of the king and his lords, came unto the banquet house. And the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in the kingdom whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father made master of the magician, astrologer, Chaldean, soothsayer, for as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and solving of doubts were found in the same Daniel whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. So here the queen was trying to comfort the king, that don't worry, like, there is somebody here who could do that, during the time of your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, actually his grandfather. And he, according to him, that, whoever can do that will be the third ruler of the kingdom. Actually, Babylon is always ruled by two persons. Belshazzar was the king, but actually his father, Nabonidus, was also a king. They were co-rulers of the kingdom. But he commanded that whoever could interpret will be the third ruler of the kingdom. And Daniel, was offered that position. Now let's see what Daniel will say in Daniel 5, verse 13 to 31. Then Daniel was brought before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel which art from the children of captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee, that the Spirit of God is in thee, and the light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, had been brought before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretation and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be the third ruler of the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy reward to another. Yet I will interpret the writing unto the king, and make known unto him the interpretation thereof. So here, don't worry, Daniel was telling the king, don't worry about the gifts, and the honor and the position. I'm not interested of it. But anyway, I'm going to tell you what this dream and interpretation, the writing and the interpretation. This is now the interpretation that Daniel told the king. O thou king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people and nation and languages tremble and fear before him, whom he would slew, and whom he would kept alive, and whom he would set up, and whom he would put down. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from the kingly throne, and they took his glory from him, and he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was upon